Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Working It Out podcast. I'm here today with Virginia Anderson, who is the CEO of Disability Snowsport UK. Welcome to the Working Out podcast, Virginia.
Thank you for having me. It's lovely to be able to, especially while the Paralympics are on, talk about adaptive sport.
I cannot wait to get into Paralympics disability sport. This is a first for me on the series, so really, really excited to dig into that. So the first thing we do with everyone who's in our community, you're now in. You don't have a choice in that one, unfortunately. We ask people to induct one item from their relationship with physical activity into our locker. I'm really interested to hear what your one item would be, please.
So I found this a really difficult question, and I was going to say my ski boots, and then I was like, they're only part that the thing that I carry with me everywhere, whether it's to a yoga class, whether it's running, whether it's up a mountain, whatever else, is a red spotty cloth hanky, like a proper fabric hanky. And it sounds really silly, but if you're running in the rain, they don't fall to pieces. You can wipe things up. You can get mud off yourself. You can do whatever. If you're up a mountain and it's snowing and the wind is horizontal, you can still deal with your streaming eyes or your streaming nose or whatever it happens to be. And it's almost become like my kind of comfort blanket. Like I quite literally, the minute my trainers or my ski boots or anything else go on, I have a hanky in my right. That's it. It's just always with me, and they're indestructible. I have a collection of them, and so my vote goes to the cloth hanky. I would recommend them to anyone who lives in the UK and has to exercise outdoors in the rain.
That's an incredible one. I was guessing snow sport items. I was thinking, what could it potentially be? And you mentioned a few activities there already, like running, yoga, and going up mountains and snowing, which should form quite part of this conversation. But a hanky, I would not have predicted that. Wow, where do I go with questions on hanky? Because normally I go, oh, tell me more about how that becomes part of your relationship.
That is a really important thing because for example, it's the small things that trip you up, isn't it? So if you've signed up for, I don't know, I run 10Ks. So if you've signed up for something and you're a bit nervous about it, if you're chasing a particular time, I remember once being completely furious that I missed whatever my target was in the Great Scottish Run by seconds, but I had stopped to tie my laces at the end of the first kilometre because we'd just run up a hill. My trainers weren't quite right, and I stopped, and it wiped out. It wiped out that PB that I was chasing, and I was so annoyed with myself. So actually, hanky is a really practical thing because it's the thing that stops you dropping the weights in your hands because you can dry them. It's the thing that if you can't see where you're going because you're up a mountain and it's snowing and your nose is streaming, your eyes are streaming, you can sort yourself without things flying everywhere, bits of tissue disintegrating everywhere. Broke my nose 20 years ago. So I do have a stuffy nose, but it's the thing that also, if you're doing anything where you think your breathing's not quite right, you're this, that, it just removes that small, niggle that becomes a big problem when you start to focus on it, if that makes sense. Because it's very, very easy to be like, oh, I can't do this because, or it sounds daft, but it makes all the difference. And ideally, you want to buy them like in a kind of proper old school kind of shop. My friend lives my mum lives in a village in Dumfries and Galloway, which has got like a proper kind of like outfitters where people can buy sensible things like proper socks and tea towels and hankies. And every time she goes home, I'm like, oh, will you bring me hankies? They're my hanky supplier.
That's amazing. I think for me, I recently did the marathon and I got quite, it's not like superstitious, it's just more like routine, and I needed those certain items as well. Because one time I ran 15 miles and I chafed incredibly bad. And then the next run I did, I was like, no, I need this item, this item. And then every run from them, I pretty much, my long run on the weekend, I wore the same outfit. And even on marathon day, when it was hot, I was like, no, I need these leggings, I need these shorts, I need this long sleeve top, because that's what I'm just taking out those factors, like you say.
It's that small things make a massive difference, and it's whether you really need them or not. But if you don't have them, it's very easy for your head to just to spiral into. For some people, it'll be socks. For somebody, it'll be, as you say, leggings or a particular top or a particular. for me, it's a hanky. And anytime I run, it's always in my right hand. And I feel on the treadmill at lunchtime today, and I didn't have it in my hand. It was sitting on the pocket, the thing in the treadmill. And I felt really strange. It's like I don't know how to operate my
Mm.
arms without, because it's also a reminder not to grip your hands too hard, because it's quite easy if you're getting tensed up about stuff as you start to grip, and you have to have a loose grip and relax my hands, and just it's enough to remind me just to, you know, relax into what I'm doing, taking
Yeah.
that bit of worry away. And it's fine. I know what I'm doing. I've practiced. I know what I need to do. I'm there for a reason. And it's become my kind of security blanket.
I think it's quite interesting. Before we press record, we were talking, and you said, I'm no athlete at all, and I'm not here saying you are an athlete, but the routine and the items that you're talking, the way you're talking right now, in terms of I feel comfortable with it. I've done this many times with it. I feel it helps with the process. A lot of people who are athletes say exactly the same things about a certain pair of, well, even just released one recently with Joe Pavey. She was talking about her compression socks and so how she needed the compression socks. They're also in my locker. And without those, she would get an injury and she wouldn't be able to focus. And
Yeah.
it was it. So you do have more in common with the athletes than you probably made out to.
But it's an interesting thing because we're all human beings. The stuff that goes through our heads,
Hmm.
there's common themes for all of us, regardless of what our bodies can do. We are still human, and there's more that I think connects us than separates us, essentially.
Exactly. And which perfectly leads us on to the second part around emotions. The emotions that come to your mind when I say, or when someone says, let's do some physical activity. So when it does come to physical activity, what one emotion, what one feeling describes your relationship with it?
For me, there's a huge thing, particularly in the work we do at Disability Snowsport UK, that is about freedom and about joy. And
Mm-hmm.
there's something really, really powerful about being at the top of a mountain, being at the top of a ski slope, whether it's, but also realizing what your body can do and conquering stuff you're
Mm-hmm.
maybe a bit nervous about. And that sense of just being able to get outside and to do things, the freedom that skiing and snowboarding brings people is astonishing. And regardless of what kind of body they have or how their brain
Mm-hmm.
works, that freedom and that joy is still the same. And there's nervousness and there's trepidation and there's all of that other stuff that comes with it too. But the freedom of being outdoors and taking part and sharing that with other people is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't separate freedom and joy, but we hear from our members and the people we ski with a lot, that sense of freedom is really important to them. And I really relate to that as an individual. And that's something that we all share, and that we're
Mm-hmm.
free just to be whoever we are and do what we can do. And that's massively important. And I think also, I think to take it off of kind of the personal for a moment, just what we do as an organization, I think one of the things that's really interesting is that, so if you are a wheelchair user, for example, somebody else sets your speed limit or how far you can travel. A power
Mm-hmm.
chair has a speed limit on it. It has a battery life. There's only so far you can go. Or somebody pushes you and you're not controlling the speed, somebody else is pushing you. Or there's lots of limitations in terms of kit and equipment. And so the
Mm-hmm.
absolute joy of actually, if you are using adapted equipment as a skier, is that sense of freedom and speed and finding out what you can do is astonishing. And that's no different for you or I using different skis than when we're a beginner. Then you make a bit more progress and what you can do and what you're able to feel and achieve. And that sense of freedom is still there. And I think it's common for all of us. I think probably if you ask most people who ski or snowboard, what does it feel like to you? And freedom is a big one, I think.
I can imagine how do you get those people with disabilities who they must be feeling anxious beforehand? They must, or
I think
how is that journey for
the
someone?
journey, so the journey is different for all of us as individuals. I had to go back when I started this job. I went back to the dry ski slope where I learned as a child and started again, and that was worse at 40 something than it was at when I was 11 or whatever I started, because
Mm.
it had this huge gap. And actually, the thing that we did at that point was I had a lesson in how to fall over and to get up. And once I'd done that, I was fine. So we do the same thing. We work with people to understand they're in the environment that they're in, to take safe risks, to understand if they fall over, this is how we get up. So that they're reassured that there's people there, that they're supported, that actually they can overcome their nervousness and that they can achieve things and build confidence. And it's a step-by-step process. And for me, it's just as important in terms of what we do as an organization, um, that we're giving people that confidence building and that faith in themselves and that sense of achievement is every bit as important as what part of a ski slope they can ski down from, or what kind of kit they're using, or how, whether they're racing or not, or whether they're just pottering about on a Sunday afternoon. Doesn't matter. That bit around, as a human being, being able to do something you're proud of and to feel better for it, both physically and emotionally, is massive. So that's about support. It's about being honest with people about what we think they can do, pushing them a bit. I have the very great privilege of joining. We run a holiday program every year. So I was in Andorra for a week earlier in the year, and one of our skiers, great guy called Will, who has cerebral palsy, his goal for the week was to complete a blue run. Ski slopes go from green, blue, red, black. Black are the really scary ones. I'm not there yet. And on day one, he did that, and then suddenly it was like, oh, what else can I do? And we had a kind of reunion weekend a couple of weeks ago, and Will is now learning to ride horses. There's a whole load of other stuff that he's gone on to do, and he's now going to a coaching group for skiing. So that kind of, he's done so brilliantly, but that was all about confidence. That's all about being alongside someone to see what they can do and making sure that they know they're safe.
That's amazing. And to tie that back in with yourself, has there been a period, whether it be snow sport or activities, because you mentioned being up mountains and running and walking and yoga, where do you get your sense of freedom at the moment?
Some people will swim lanes to the pool or do whatever. I like being outside. I'm really lucky where I live. I live in Glasgow, and it's really easy to get into the hills. It's really easy on a Friday afternoon to go, actually, the weather's decent, let's go. And you're away for the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So just being outdoors, there's something really powerful for me about being outside, being in a different environment, being away from my desk and away from, if you go to gym or whatever, there's a lot of music, there's a lot of people, and that's great. But sometimes you just want to escape. You want to get a bit covered in mud. You want to be a kid. You want to be stomping around in mud or snow or whatever and having fun and doing that with no mobile phone signal and no emails and all of that kind of stuff. That's the thing that for me is amazing.
So talking about being a kid, the next part is around like earliest memories. So are these some of your earliest memories, or being outside, out in the open?
Although I didn't take part in any competitive sport, we were active. We were out on our bikes all the time. We're always out with the dog. We were always swimming. We camped. We did all of that kind of stuff. But actually, I was thinking about this. One of the most powerful memories I have is around skiing in Scotland as a kid and school trips at a point in time where everybody's ski kit basically came from C&A. You didn't have proper thermals. You'd be wearing tights under your ski boots, and you had like kind of soggy sandwiches in your bag, and you couldn't see anything of where you're going because it's Glen Sea in February and the wind is horizontal and you can't see a thing, and you've just skied into a fence or into. I remember once taking out a whole bunch of my friends because I couldn't see where I was going. They were waiting in the middle of a ski lesson, and I just tanked into them and just being frozen, but having so much fun. But it's a very different with the kit. The kit we've got today is completely different. Skis that were really long are now really, to me, still feel short. But yeah, it's those memories of just being cold, properly cold, but very happy, and very steamy bus journeys on a Sunday into the mountains in Scotland.
So you said like skiing in Scotland as a kid, and you linked to doing it with your friends. Was that the activities that you would do like with your school as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because as, but as a London city boy, that blows my mind first, because our activities were still sounds nice. There's a lovely park in London called Richmond Park, and we do cross country around there. And a lot of my friends are really jealous of that. But the thought of you being able to get outside and ski with school sounds
I was
amazing.
all ski. My family didn't ski. My parents didn't ski, so it was through school that I learned to ski. And then I think we got signed up for kind of summer activities and whatever in the local ski club, where we teach now, which is amazing.
Mhm.
But it's yeah, I think sometimes you need to be surrounded, but you need to be introduced by other people to stuff. It's not always a given that your parents or your siblings will do a certain thing. So for me, it was about my friends, and we were able to go and just have fun and hang out and escape, and it was brilliant, wet but brilliant.
I think that's really interesting because you said your family didn't ski. How were they in terms of influential to you in terms of being physically active, getting outside?
I think so I was a musical kid, so I never played hockey on a Saturday
Mm.
morning or whatever. We spent endless hours standing by rugby pitches because my brother played a lot of rugby. But we were always active, so there was a swimming pool around the corner from school on the way home. So we were
Mhm.
there a lot of the time after school, just hanging out. Um, so swimming was a big thing for us as a family. So we're always active, and we would be out
Mhm.
on walks and whatever, but not it was never competitive sport because my interests at that point were different. But looking back now, I think I'm a I think I was probably a lot more active than I give myself credit for, if that makes sense.
Oh, completely. That's why we're talking through this now. And you said, "Oh, haven't been in the." If you look at my history, I haven't been in the sport industry. I wouldn't call it that. I'm not a sporty person. That's why the terminology is really
Yeah.
interesting because, and we always talk around. That's why I say like physically
Yeah.
active is a lot of the questions I ask because, and the people I did one with Haley from GM Moving, and she talks a lot about just movement.
Yeah.
And I did it again. Just she keeps telling me off for using the word just movement because it's not just movement. That's still okay.
Yeah, we talk very much about helping people to be active because I think
Mhm.
sometimes the word sport can be intimidating. It can be, we know that particularly for disabled people, they don't always see themselves in an environment that is sporty, but
Mhm.
they want to move. And actually, really critically, being active and movement is really important. We'll all have had discussions about our core strengths and the importance of
Mhm.
having a strong core. But actually, if you take that on another level, if you're somebody with a physical disability, that core strength becomes very important because it's not just about your ability to run further or faster or be a better football player or preventing back pain. For somebody with a physical disability, it might be about their ability to help them hold their head up and they're
Yeah.
about their overall posture. And we think of a posture as about sitting up straight, but actually, if you have a physical disability, say if you have quadriplegic cerebral palsy that maybe affects all of your limbs, your ability to sit up straight affects your breathing, your ability to
Mhm.
eat, your ability reduces your kind of risk of chest infections because your swallowing is really important. So actually being active is about so much more than baseline kind of health and fitness. It's about staying well. And there's some awful statistics out there about so I used to work in a cerebral palsy organization, so I'll tell you a lot about CP because it's the thing I potentially know better than other stuff. Very few people with cerebral palsy are walking and working at 50 because there's something called
Mhm.
secondary aging. So one part of your body is doing a whole load of work and the other bit maybe is not. Then if you injure the good shoulder, suddenly your arms, you're much more limited in what you can do.
Yeah.
So being active, being well, is about staying employed. It's about being an active friend, parent, family member. It's about being able to participate in life. So I'm really passionate about the power of activity, movement, sport in terms of what that does in terms of people's confidence about their ability to say, my mum was a wheelchair user, adapted exercise classes after she stopped using crutches and started using a wheelchair was life changing for her because suddenly
Mhm.
she had a social life. Suddenly she was able to do things that she hadn't for a long time. She was able to transfer independently from her chair into her bed or whatever, which she hadn't been able to do. So the knock-on effect of what we think of in broad terms as sport is
Mm.
huge. And it's not, and it goes beyond the kind of standard health and well-being agenda. For a lot of people, the importance of it goes way above and beyond what you and I would be worried about in
Mhm.
terms of our physical health.
That's really interesting context. We've spoken quite a bit about your organisation actually, but only in little tokens. And we said about Disability Snowsport UK. But this next part is for those who haven't heard of your organisation, haven't met yourself, and are first time coming across what you do. Could you give everyone a bit of a overview of your organisation, your role, its linked to activity, and what you're currently doing?
Our vision as an organisation is about mountains and ski slopes that are free from barriers, because what we want is for disabled people to be able to take part alongside family, friends and their communities. We make snow sport accessible for everybody, whether it's regardless of disability, injury or experience. It means we do all of that because we want disabled people to be more active, and we want people to make friends. We want people to have fun by taking part in snow sport. And we also want to help the snow sports sector to include more disabled people. One thing we're always asked is like, why skiing and snowboarding? What people sometimes struggle with. So they think of disability sport, they think of wheelchair basketball or rugby, they think of bocce, they think of some of the things the kind of Paralympic sports that we see. Actually, anyone who's on skis or on a snowboard is using kit that they don't use every day. What you would use and what I would use would be different from each other because there'll be different heights, weights, experience. And actually, so it's very inclusive because everybody is using kit that is specific to them. So the fact that you're, instead of using ski poles, you might be using riggers that are like crutches with little kind of mini skis on the end instead of your ski poles. Nobody bats an eyelid because it's like everybody's got stuff that's different from somebody else, and that's fine. But also, as one of my trustees puts it, everyone is wobbly on skis. Doesn't matter how you could be an Olympic athlete. If you've never skied before, you're going to have those moments. Everybody is on an unstable surface. We're in an
I
environment
would
that we're
be.
not in every day. And it's also something where it's a sport people can take part in together. If you play a team sport, a team wheelchair sport, for example, you need a whole load of other friends who are wheelchair users. Whereas a guy in a monoski can be skiing alongside somebody who's a snowboarder. It doesn't matter what you're using. You're not in a different environment. You're alongside everybody else. And I think for us, that's critical because what our focus is as an organisation is about enabling people to take part. So we've got ski schools across the UK, and we teach disabled people to ski and snowboards. We run local groups, we run coaching and development groups, we run summer camps, after school clubs, all sorts of things. That's about just getting people active out there, getting out there, having fun, making friends, and just seeing what they can do. So that is amazing.
I saw on your social media that you're currently fundraising,
Yes, we are.
and I was quite interested in finding out what you're fundraising for. To give it a plug, why
Yeah,
not? And also to figure out, like, that's obviously the project you're working on at the moment. So I'd be really
yeah.
interested to hear about that.
So actually, what I'd like to do slightly is set the context of that, because what we do as an
Mm.
organisation, we make sure our activities are priced the same or less than it would be for a non-disabled person to turn up at a ski lesson. The difficulty is that the real costs of that are probably somewhere between a third, sometimes double, depending on the circumstances for that to make that happen. So we believe in equality of access. So we have to fundraise to make up that shortfall that pays for specialist instructors, pays for specialist equipment. And critically, there are people who will learn to ski independently, but there are some people who will never ski independently because if they have a visual impairment, they might need a guide. If they're using a bi-ski, which is a sitting down ski with two skis underneath it, they may also always need a guide with them to help steer that sit ski or to keep them safe if anything happens. So there is always going to be a cost that is potentially greater than it is for the average person. And we want to remove barriers. That's our goal as an organisation. In order to do that, we need to raise money. The big challenge for us is where that comes from. We don't get any government funding. We do everything through fundraising. So we've got a campaign running at the moment in alongside the Olympics and the Paralympics as a kind of time frame called 10K for 10K. We've got a whole lot of people who are out there raising money based on a kind of 10,000 steps, 10,000 kilometres, 10,000 whatever it is. So there's a ski journalist who has been mowing his lawn. He's committed to doing 10K of mowing his lawn in the Highlands, which is not a lawn as the south of England might imagine
I
it.
was
It's a
thinking,
whole lot more scrubby, and we've got some brilliant pictures of him in his ski gear. We've got families who've signed up to kind of ski 10K. I'm doing the Great Scottish Run in a few weeks' time. Um, but a part of that is also about just getting people out there and having fun as well. Our chair has just swum 10K in Italy this week. So everybody's doing their bit. So we do need to go out there and raise money. And if people want to support us, go have a look at our website. Every penny counts. Because just £10 would pay for a lift pass for a child to have their first lesson. And we know that lesson can be life changing. If somebody finds a thing that they love, they'll keep doing it. And it doesn't take much to get somebody started. So that £10 could literally be life changing for a child who's signed up for their first lesson. It might be that what it helps do is pay for a specialist instructor to support somebody, to enable them to keep going. Yeah. So if anyone fancies signing up for 10K of lawn mowing, roller skating, bungee jumping, whatever it is, that you could do 10,000 reps, 10,000 steps, 10,000 kilometers, whatever, or 10 kilometers rather, go for it. And if you want to support Team DSUK, have a look at our website. There's the donate button right there, and you can find out more about what we're up to.
what I'll do is the day I release this pod, I'm going to advertise it by running a 10K. I'll commit on recording. I'll say I've finished my 10K and I've published the podcast. That's what I'll do, and then I'll post it. I'll post it on socials as well. So we've covered your organisation and your personal relationship with physical activity, and what we'll do now is start to dig into what you believe are the causes of inactivity. And I know you're UK and based in Scotland, so I've been really digging into England quite a bit, but we can talk broader UK wise.
Yeah.
And with that, then we'll try to narrow you down. So if to start, if you were going to map out the causes of inactivity and you were set this task, where does your thought process start?
I think so. I'm coming at this from a very specific perspective, and it is about the disabled community. And the Activity Alliance, if people are interested in disability in sport, the Activity Alliance they do a research project every year, which is absolutely amazing in terms of the stuff that they produce and the statistics. But we know that around 80% of disabled people say that their condition or their impairment stops them being active. Sometimes they're quite often just not aware of the suitable activities that are out there. And they also worry, you asked this question earlier, about safety and risk. But around 6 in 10 disabled people feel that they can't be as active as they would like to be. And it's why things like and I love the way the Paralympics are being reported this year, because they've started talking about classifications and stopped talking about inspiration quite so much. Because actually disabled people being in our swimming pools, our racetracks, our mountains should be utterly normal. And it's not as normal as that people are able to see the opportunities are available to them. And to remove some of the fear from that. And I get that thing about being nervous and looking into a world of sport and thinking that's not for me. Because as a kid who wasn't a sporty kid, because I was tall, I was always just stuck in goals and told you basically spent half an hour in the rain feeling miserable and then went home again. That lots of people have a poor experience of sport. And then you have to multiply that for somebody who has a physical impairment or a learning disability, whatever it happens to be. But it should be normal. People who are disabled or have had a life-changing diagnosis or injury should be every part of our kind of world of sport, movement, activity. So it's important that we let people know that opportunities exist, that it's safe,
Hmm.
it's affordable, and it's for people like them, and it is fun. That you don't have to be an inspiring Paralympian to be a runner. You can just be a runner, and that's fine. So it's how we communicate about sport and activity is really important, and how we publish opportunities, how we encourage. But I also think clubs and facilities can quite often be nervous about welcoming people in. And actually, my challenge to all of those clubs and facilities would be to say yes, and then approach people like us, or the Activity Alliance, or the discipline specific adaptive the sport provider, who can give you advice and help you make it successful for someone. Um, that's my challenge to the world of sport: is say yes, and then we'll figure out how to do it, rather than saying, "Oh, don't put it back on the disabled person." Think about how you can remove the barrier.
So we've got around 80% of disabled people say disability, they believe their disability affects their ability to be active. We've said around a whole part around removing fear for the person with a disability, and that it should feel normal to be active. And then started to go into, okay, what that means, how are we gonna do that? So there's a few different levels from awareness of opportunity. So the role of
Yeah,
yourselves at Disability Sport UK, you believe that there's a role there.
yeah,
You believe that there's a role for clubs to play
yeah,
as well,
absolutely.
in terms of clubs being, whether brave is the right word, and saying yes and then coming to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
How then? So where would you say? Because we're talking about maybe we've spoken about top down things here, but then also bottom up in terms of there's grassroots action and also from a governing body action. If you classify yourself as that, would you how would you balance that? Where would you say the responsibility lies?
I, I think I think that's a really difficult question. I think there are systemic things that can change, and the I think it's getting better at that level, but we're not there yet, because I think particularly with funders, quite often what happens is they say, "Oh, that cost per head is really high. We're going to give the grant to somebody else who can see 100 people instead of 10 people," rather than assessing what somebody with more complex needs actually needs to succeed. And not everybody is going to sustain activity
Mm-hmm.
independently. Not everybody is going to progress. That actually the progression is in their confidence. Their progression is in the fact that they're out and seeing friends once a week in an environment that keeps them active. It doesn't have to be progression in a sporting sense. And that confidence and that mental health piece is critical. So I have a challenge to the funders that says that, and actually some disabled people are just more expensive. That is the stark reality. On the kind of club and venue side of things, it is about just be brave, say yes, come and get help, because the lessons you will learn about being what good looks amazing. And I think if you can get it right for somebody with a disability, that's good for everyone. So if it challenges you to think about your safeguarding process, or if it challenges you to think about how accessible your building is, actually that applies to the mum with the pram, or the person who is wrangling how they get their school class from A to B safely, and whatever else. There's lots and lots of ways that actually thinking through what being accessible and welcoming means for your club or venue actually is good for a much wider group of people.
What do you feel like you could do more of so that a person doesn't have that fear?
I think a lot of that is about information. Some of it is about, and so a lot of that is about potentially also working in partnership. So allied health professionals like physios or occupational therapists, or through kind of education, is making sure that all of those people are aware of the opportunities that exist and the benefit of them as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to get better at providing information. We need to get better at dispelling some of the myths around things. And actually, what's a really important part of our process is the conversation that happens before somebody even puts a pair of ski boots on or snowboard boots on, is that we have a conversation about what they need, how they're feeling, what their body does, what they're worried about, what they're excited about, what they'd like to achieve. And then we think about, because quite often people come and say, I'll definitely be a sit skier. Maybe not. Hang on a minute here. Let's see what you can do. And we take the time to listen. And that is a critical thing, is about listening to people so that we remove those bits one by one. There are also a tremendous number of disabled people in the UK. 6.9 million disabled people of working age. So 19% of the working age population is classified as disabled. Now, not all of those people will call themselves disabled, because they might be classified in terms of statistics or whatever because of a cancer diagnosis or something like that. But there's 770,000 disabled children under the age of 16. That's one child in 20. Actually, if you're a commercial business, it makes total sense not to ignore that population, because that population of kids, those kids have friends, they have brothers and sisters, they have parents, they all want to go out into the world and do things. So actually, by excluding the disabled child, you're excluding a whole family. So it's not just about funders, it's about businesses saying, hang on a minute, there's a whole lot of people out there that we're missing a trick with. 1 in 20. It's 5% of that population under 16. The spending power there is huge. And critically, also, disabled people will be very quick to walk away from things that don't work, or if you make it difficult for them, because they've done enough fighting a lot of the time. So if your website doesn't work, or if you need to make a phone call instead of being able to book online, why should you have to? If it's too difficult, they won't bother. So it makes great business sense if you're a travel provider, if you're a venue, if you're a commercial outfit of any kind, or a club trying to make sure that you can balance the bills at the end of the year. Welcome everybody in, because it's good for business.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree with that. I think we'll finish there for today. That was really interesting. Thank you so much. I think there's a lot to take away, a lot for me to think about, and a lot to add in terms of from a disabled person's point of view. I just wanted to give this an opportunity in terms of, if you feel, from creating a map to engaging with people with disabilities, if there was something which you feel we didn't cover today, which you feel should be on the map or we should cover, please do now.
I don't know if there's anything else that springs to mind, but I do. I worry about disabled young people, because they disconnect after school or college or whatever, and getting them back. That's the population. That's the group of people that, if I could fix it for them, and that would be the dream, because fix it then, and you will sustain activity for the long term. And also, life is just better with more friends, more fun, more stuff to do.